All right, so for this video, we are going to be creating a new Revit project, and we are going to build a building from an existing plan. So with that said, you'll need to launch Revit, and instead of clicking on a previous project, we're going to start a new one. So we're going to go over here to Model, and we're going to do New Model, and we're going to use the Imperial Multidiscipline template. And we're going to create a new project and click OK. So before you start this, you need to, or maybe at this point, you need to go back to Canvas, and you'll see building a model of an existing plan in Module 4 in our exercise. And you need to download all of these JPEG files. They're just image files. So you need the floor plan, and then all 4 of the elevations. So once you have that, you can come back into Revit. And the first thing we're going to start doing is importing those images and using them to help us build the model. Before we insert our images, though, we want to make sure we've got some basic views set up, and that the levels are set up, and that we're prepared to model. So we're now familiar a little bit with the default template that Autodesk gives us with Revit. But one of the things that's annoying are the extra views it creates, and then it gives us a lot of other stuff in the view that we don't need. So let's clean that up a little bit, and let's rename some stuff. So the first thing I want to check are the levels. So let's go to a front view, or probably it'll be the south view here. So let's find the elevations, and let's go to the south elevation, and you can see we've got our levels. So let's rename our levels. Level 1, let's do main floor and caps. And then let's call L2 roof. And let's go over to our floor plans and rename those views as well. So we'll call this main floor, and we'll call L2, we'll rename it roof. And remember, to rename, you're just right-clicking over here. All right, we can probably keep the names for the north, south, east, and west elevations, but let's just, sorry, the other thing I wanted to mention is when we rename the floor plans, let's actually rename it to main floor plan so that we know what that view is. And we do not want to rename the corresponding view, so we're going to hit no. Then we're going to right click on roof and rename, and we'll call it the roof plan. Hit enter, and we do not want to rename the levels. So we're going to hit no, because we don't want the level to say roof plan or main floor plan. We just want it to say main floor and roof. Okay, now that we got things named, let's look at the levels really quickly. I don't like 12 feet. 12 feet's a little too high. Let's just say we're going to have 9 foot ceilings in this house. And okay, we were going to rename the elevation. So I'm going to rename the east elevation to say east elevation. I'm going to rename the north. We'll just go through each one. Again, because remember, when we place these on sheets, it's going to the little tag on the sheet is going to be what we put here by default. You can change that so that the sheet name isn't the same as the view name, but by default, it will use the view name. So we might as well just name it correctly up front. All right. So let's just look at what we have set up. We've got the levels set up correctly now. We're not going to have a basement, so we don't need a basement level. We're just really going to have the main floor and then the roof. So I think we've got that set up. Really the most critical thing when you begin is setting up your levels, just to make sure when you go to model the walls, you have something to constrain the top and the bottom of the wall too. Same with the floors and the roof. What are some other views we might need? We definitely need a floor plan, a roof plan. They give us a site plan, which is nice. So that's a view that's up so high that it can see the whole project. Let's keep that. We'll probably want our L1, so the level 1 ceiling plan. Let's rename that. Let's call that main floor ceiling plan. We'll probably use that. We won't need something looking up from level 2, which we've renamed to roof level. We'll never stand at the roof level and look up. That it doesn't make sense in this case. So let's just delete that. And then we don't need any sections. So if we go back to the main floor plan, you can see there's this red section going through. Let's just delete it for now. It's going to tell us it's going to delete section 1, which is over here. Let's click OK. That's OK. Then you can see these are our elevation, the front, the south, north, south, east, and west elevations. These are the tags that that are associated with these views. So we'll probably leave those. And then coordination. It's given us more floor plans and views. And it's even given us a cover sheet view. For now, let's leave the rest of these views. We'll just collapse everything here that's in a different category. We don't necessarily need those views, but we're not going to worry about them. We'll just worry about what's in the architectural area for now. And I think we've kind of got a good starting point. So with that said, we can go back into our main floor plan. And if you remember from our previous modules, the crop region on the main floor is showing, which is great, but do you remember that it's constrained so that there's those dots that we can't move? That's going to irritate us later. So let's free that up. Let's release it from its binding. So if you select the crop region and if you go over here, and if you go down to extents, there's something called scope box. Let's change that from views overall to none. And then it releases it so that we now have these dots that we can move around. So let's extend it out just a little bit more so we can see everything that Revit still has in it. And let's get rid of this. It's called a scope box, and it's a little too advanced for this class. It's to help you lay out drawings more consistently, but I don't think we're going to go over that in this course. So let's just grab both of these. There's this scope box and this scope box. Let's just delete both of them. So now all we have is our elevation tags, and those are okay. We're going to keep those. And we do probably, it's not a bad idea to have a scale symbol, but we don't want it in the view. Same with the north arrow. You do want a north arrow, but I don't like it in the view, so let's take it out of the view. We can put that back later on the sheet when we go to create it. All right, so for now, we'll keep our section box big because we don't yet have the building modeled, and so we don't know how big we're going to need the section box. And okay, so we have our basic view set up. We've got the floor plan and all of the elevations. So now let's talk about how we start modeling. You know how to model walls, floors, ceilings, roofs. That's great. You've got the fundamentals, but now if you're going to do it off of an existing floor plan, how's the best way to do that? So I'm going to show you how I do it. You could just open up the image file and on your iPad or your phone, and you could look from there and try to start building it from there. But I like to bring the image into Revit as a background, and then I can draw on top of it. That's the easiest way I know of. So we want to bring in the excuse me, the image. So you're going to go up to the ribbon. and you're going to go to the Insert tab. And there's lots of things you can insert into a Revit. You can bring in a PDF, you can bring in an image, you can bring in another Revit file, you can bring in a CAD file. For now, we're going to import image, right here where it says import image, and you click there and browse to where you downloaded the files from Canvas. So I'm going to pick, I want the floor plan. It says small house plan. Let's click on that and open it. And now it loads this X, and now you can click where you want to put the image. So here's the image. So that's great. The problem is, before we're ready to model, we need to make sure the image is the right size, because who knows if this came in at the right size. So because there's no dimensions on the floor plan, it makes it kind of hard. So there's a couple things we can try. We know typically a front door is 3 feet. That's pretty typical. So we could scale the image using the door, or it gives us the bedroom sizes. So we could try to scale based on one of the dimensions it gives us. I'm going to use the front door, and then we'll test it to see if that's correct, if it did it right. So what you want to do is you click on the image, and we're going to learn a new command that you haven't learned before. It's called the resize command, or I think actually Revit calls it the scale command, but I remember it in my brain as resize because I think the shortcut is RE. So it's up here under your modify. So if you click the image, and then it automatically brings you to the modify image tab. Up here, there's a little white square with a bigger blue square, and this is the scale tool. So you click it, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pick on the image what you're trying to scale. So we're going to go from one side of the door to the other, and then we're going to tell it how big to make that. So I'm going to click on this side of the door, and I'm going to click to the other side of the door. And right now, do you see the temporary dimension is showing 7 feet or 7'2"? So we're going to click again at the other side of the door. And now we're going to drag it back until it says 3 feet, or you can enter 3 feet. And now it will, in this case, it made the image shrink down because it was too big. So now let's recenter it. Now I'm going to test it to see if things are making sense. So to do that, I'm going to go to, I believe it's the Modify tab. With nothing selected, I'll go to the Modify tab. There's this little thing called the Measure tool. It looks like a ruler. If you click it, it allows you to take measurements of what you see on the screen. So I'm just going to measure the door now, and it should be close to 3 feet. So that's pretty good. So that worked. Let's just check to make sure other dimensions are good. So let's try, this room's supposed to be 10'6" by 10 feet. So let's try and see if this is roughly. So that's almost 10.5 feet. So that's good. Let's measure the other direction. And that's almost 10 feet. It's not exact. It's like fractions of an inch off, but that's pretty good. So I think we're safe to start modeling off of the image now that it's been scaled to the right size. So you can decide how you want to line this up. And there's these reference planes that kind of help you find the center. I like to put maybe more like this, the center of the house. It's really up to you. It's not a big deal. All right. Now, at this point, we can start modeling. Before we start modeling, I want to show you the reference planes. I've mentioned them several times, but maybe I should take a moment to explain them to you now. Reference planes are literally, they don't really do anything. They're just there for you as you design, to help you design whatever you want. And they're just guides. They don't export. When you go to export your PDF, they won't show up. They're just in the program only. And so you can use them to help you align things. You can use them to space things out. So let's do an example. If you go to the architecture tab, there is a spot where you can create, clicked that. If you're on the architectural tab and you go down to the end where it says work plane and it says reference plane. So if you click that, you can now create a reference plane of your own. And the cool thing about reference planes is not only do they show up in your plan view, but they'll show up in your elevation views too, as long as they're being cut by the elevation. So if I draw a reference plane here, if I look at the south elevation, you'll see it. Here's our new reference plane. And you can even make it go higher or lower. So if you want it to show in the roof plan and the main floor plan, you can extend it up past the roof plan. And so now if we go to the roof plan, you can see our reference plane. Now if you go to the south elevation and you pull the reference plane down to below the roof plane, or the roof level, now you don't see it in the roof level, but you do see it in the main level. So you can see how this would be helpful if you're trying to line up something on the main level and you're looking at the roof plan and you'd like to line maybe up you'd want to line up a piece of the roof with something below. You could extend the reference plane up and it'll help guide you to help see what's below. The other thing you can do is let's copy it. Let's copy it a couple times. So if you click the button and you hit copy, there's this little thing that says multiple. Make sure that's checked, and then you can just keep copying it. So the other thing you can do is you can use these to maybe help you space something out. Maybe you're trying to lay out windows evenly along a wall. So here's one end of the wall and here's another end of the wall. And you want to find, let's even just find the center of a room. How about that? That's one of the most common things, is to find the center of a room. So if you say that's a wall and you put this reference plane and you're trying to find the center, you can, we haven't talked about dimensions yet. We've talked about temporary dimensions, that when you click something, they pop up and you can enter whatever you want. So you could try to figure out what the center of this space is. Slowly by guessing or doing some math and then entering it in. Or if you want to do it automatically, you can use a dimension. So if you go over here to the annotate tab, you're going to see the different kinds of dimensions you can create. So we're just going to do an aligned dimension and we're going to click all 3 lines. And once you've picked them, your initial reaction, if you're me, you always want to hit escape. But when you hit escape, it undoes what you just did. So let's pull all those again. And then what you have to do is you have to click off into blank space, and then it will set your dimensions. And once those are there, you can click them again and you can move them up and down. And then you'll notice there's this little button here. When you click on the dimension, this little thing comes up that says equal. And if you click that, it will equalize the spaces for you. And now what's cool is it will always keep it equal. So if you move this, it will move the center point. Okay, so that's reference planes and dimensions. Those are things that you'll probably start to need as you lay out your plan. We won't use it as much because we're using a floor plan as a background. But if you were creating a floor plan from scratch, the reference planes are very nice, even to help you align things across the building, find center lines, distribute. That's mostly what I use reference planes for. All right, so now let's go ahead and start adding our walls. That'll be the first thing we need to do. So we'll go to the architectural tab and we'll click wall. Now we're in the wall command, and if you remember from previous modules, you can just start clicking and drawing the walls. Before we do that though, let's pay attention a little bit to our properties panel. So while we have the wall command, while we're in the wall command. If you go over to the properties, it tells you the properties of the wall that you're about to create. So this is a good time to understand a little bit more of the properties. We talked about the base constraint and the top constraint. We also talked about the base offset and the top offset if you picked a top constraint. Otherwise, you get the unconnected height. So here, let me just show you. So instead of being unconnected, we like to connect it to the roof, right? The roof level. And so now you're not allowed to change the unconnected height. You can only change the top offset. But if you chose to leave it unconnected, then you could just pick the height of the wall. That's not what we want. So let's constrain the top to the roof level. The bottom is already constrained to the main floor. So that's good. So when we start drawing the wall, we know exactly where the bottom is and where the top is. So that's a good starting point. The other thing you might want to pay attention to is this top area. This is telling you what type of wall you're going to create. Right now, it's just saying we're creating a generic 8-inch wall. So if you click this, here are the other walls that are available in the template. So these are just walls that someone created already for you and put it into the template. These are all examples of family types. So these are so a wall is a system family. And then inside the system family, these are all the different types. And you can create your own type, which we will do later in this exercise. For now, let's just pick a wall type that will get us close. Let's do a generic 6-inch wall because the exterior walls on a building are usually insulated and they're structural, so they're usually thicker than the interior walls. So we'll use a 6-inch wall and we've constrained the top and the bottom. The other thing you want to pay attention to is what's called the location line. And this is, it's hard to explain, so let me just show you. So let's leave it at center wall line right now. That's the default, is the center of the wall. So it's basically saying when you draw this wall, the line that you're drawing, you can see you're drawing, the blue dotted line that you're drawing is in the center of the wall. So now if I hit escape once, I'm still in the wall command. If I come up here and I change the location line, let's do the finish face exterior. So in this case, now watch what happens. When I draw the line, do you see how it's to the exterior face of the wall rather than the center? Now let's hit escape again and let's change this to finish face interior. So now when I click and drag, do you see how the line is putting it, the line that I'm drawing is on the interior face of the wall? This doesn't seem like it'll make a difference, but it will later when you build when you start to modify the walls. So now if I click on my wall, do you see how these little dots that allow me to extend the wall? Do you see how they're in the center of the wall? That lets me know that the location line for that wall is still set to center line. And this one is still set to the exterior, and you can see that the face, the little dots, are on the exterior face, and then same with this one. So I'm going to delete all of these, and I'm going to get back into the wall command. And it's up to you how you want to draw it. I almost never use the center line. In this case, I'm going to use the exterior. Actually, I'm going to use the interior face of the wall. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change it to finish face interior. And now I've picked my wall type, I've picked the location line, and I've set up where the bottom of the wall is and the top of the wall. So now I think I'm ready to start drawing. So we're just going to quickly go around this house, and I'm just going to follow the interior edge of the house. Let's go to here, here. And it's usually a good practice to do the exterior walls a different wall type than the interior walls, because you're never going to use the same wall type on the interior as the exterior. So I like to create the walls separate. A lot of times designers, when they are doing just the beginning stages of design, they'll use all the same wall types. But if you do that, it makes a lot of problems later when you try to move the walls and edit the structure of the walls. So right out of the gate, I just start with a different wall for the exterior. The other thing I'm going to do is, technically this wall is the stoop wall, so both of these walls are going to be exterior walls. So I'm also going to create another wall right here. Oh, here's another trick. When you're drawing, do you see how it's on the wrong side of my line? I still picked the interior side of the floor plan, but Revit doesn't know that that's the interior side. So I need to flip the wall. So you can either finish drawing it and then click on it and hit the space bar and it will flip it, or I'm going to delete this and go back to the wall command. You can also hit spacebar while you're drawing and it will flip it for you. So that's a tip that you'll want to learn. And then you can see as I'm drawing this wall, it's trying to, when I get close to this wall below, it starts to snap to help me align it. So I'm going to go to there and let it snap. And then I'm going to draw a connecting wall back down to here. So now I have all my exterior walls. Another thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back to my Modify tab. Is that where it is? Oh no, the View tab. If I go to the View tab, I'm going to turn thick lines off because I find them really distracting. I like, when I'm drawing, I like thin lines so I can see exactly what I'm selecting. All right, so now we got all our exterior walls, and if we go to our 3D view, you can see it's drawn them. It's been drawing them in 3D, and if you go to the south elevation, you can see it's been drawing it between our main floor and our roof, so that if we ever need to change it to like a 10-foot roof, it will change all of our walls that we just drew. So let's put it back to 9. Now let's do our interior walls. So let's go back to Architecture tab, Walls, and let's change it from a generic 6-inch wall to a generic 4-inch wall. And then because they're interior walls, it doesn't really matter which location line you use, whether it's interior or exterior, but you definitely don't want to use a center line. So I'm just going to do Finish Face Interior. I'll keep it the way it was. And I'm just going to start drawing these. Okay, I'm going to pause the video, and once I'm done drawing it, I will come back. This might be a good time for you to also pause the video and see if you can draw all these walls yourself. Something I'm going to point out as I'm drawing my walls is that remember, you can use, if you don't quite get a wall right the first time, you can always use the modifier keys. So, or the modifier command. So I'm just, real quickly, I'm just gonna do something like this. And do you see how this didn't quite go to this wall? Remember, there's the if you click the wall, you can do a couple things. You can still grab and extend the wall over, and it will join automatically when you drag it to the other wall. Or you can click on the wall and you can use the extend command. And you can extend this wall to that wall. You can also always use the trim command. So if you overshot something, you can still click on the wall. You can go up here and use the trim command. So we've gone over all of those commands, but I want to remind you that you can use those while you're editing the walls. All right, I'm going to pause again and finish my walls. Okay, so now I've got my exterior walls and my interior walls, and if I look in 3D, you can see they're all nicely aligned. It's looking good. So let's go back to our main floor plan. The only thing we haven't been paying attention to is actual dimensions. I just kind of followed the image underneath, and I didn't verify that these are dimensions that make sense. So something I like to do at this stage is to simply go to the Annotate tab and get the dimension tool and start clicking on, I like to do the exterior first. And you can click on all of these and grab each edge. I'll do it from all sides. And because we're drawing this from an image, we don't know exactly what it's supposed to be, but we should at least get rid of ridiculous dimensions. And luckily, I don't have any fractions of an inch, which is what you really want to avoid, are fractional inches. So everything seems to be good. I think if it's to the nearest inch, you're probably fine. And then you could do the same thing with the interior rooms if you'd like, just to make sure that things make sense. So I'm just going to show you an example. So if you didn't like the way something was, you can click on the wall that you want to move. So if we don't like that this is an odd dimension, and same here, this is so close to being 20 feet, maybe we want this to be 20 feet. So there's a nice even 5 feet here. Maybe this wants to be 20 feet. So we're going to say, okay, to make this whole piece of wall 20 feet, we're going to move this back wall. So if you click on the back wall, you can see your temporary dimensions, which you can still move around like you did before. But when you click on the wall, it also allows you to use the dimensions that you've pulled to edit the wall. So if we want this dimension to be 20, we can just type in 20 and it'll move the wall for us. So now we've got a nice 5 feet in the back, 20 feet in the middle, and then 5 feet here. That seems kind of nice. So same here. Let's maybe move this wall so that it's, let's maybe make it, well, actually, I think I'm probably okay. I just wanted to show you that you can move walls with the permanent dimensions, or you can use the temporary dimensions that pop up. And then same with this laundry room. Let's say we want it just a little bit deeper. We want it 3'5" or 3'6" inches. So I put 3 space 6 and I move it out just a little bit. I'm not going to grade you on what all the dimensions are. I just want you to know as you lay out a building, you can do this. And you can keep the dimensions there or you can get rid of them. It's up to you. All right. So there's the walls. And let's go to the south elevation. And now let's bring in the south elevation to help us start modeling the front of the building. So we're going to say the south is the front of the building, because if you look at the floor plan, it's hard to tell, but this is the entry to the house. So the south side is the front side and the north side is the back. So let's go to our south elevation. And if you remember how to import an image, you go to the Insert tab and Import Image. And now we're just going to pick our front elevation and we can place it. So again, you can scale this image like I showed you with the floor plan, but I'm not going to bother scaling this because, well, okay, it's probably okay to scale it. Let's see what happens when we scale it. I'm not going to draw over the front elevation. I'm just going to use this as a reference so that I know how to design the roof. And then I'll pull the walls up to the roof. So if you don't worry about the actual scale, you can just drag the image like this. And you can just make it as big or as small as you would like. And you can use the arrow keys to move the image around on your keyboard. Or if you want to try to scale it yourself, you can. But let's just, in our case, let's use the move. Let's click the image and you can hit the move command. And let's just click. So this is the foundation wall. The main level, the top of the floor, is actually right here. So let's move that down to our main level. And then you can see the roof line doesn't quite match up. And so you can see actually where the roof rests on the wall is right here. So we're going to scale the image. Let's click on the image and we'll hit the scale tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down this wall right to the main floor level. And we're going to click because we want to scale from the main level up to where the roof joists rest on the wall. We want to make that the same size as our roof line. So I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to drag it up to our roof level, and then it will resize the image to match. So we can roughly see how the house should look when we're done. And it's to scale now. So I'm not gonna align it. So technically we could move it over here to try to align it, but really it's gonna be hard to do it that way. So we'll leave it where it is. And we're gonna start modeling from there. So we're gonna have to try to use our imaginations on what the roof would look like. So you can see, if we compare it to what we just drew, this area is right here. And then this is, we have two gable ends here, but it's sloped on, let's start drawing. So it's sloped on this edge and this edge and this edge. Actually, the best way to do this, let's close everything but let's open, okay, so we have our south elevation, and let's do our roof plan. And then let's go to view, and let's go to tile, our views. So now we can see our roof plan, and we can see this front. So let's lay out our roof. Let's try to imagine what it's going to look like. Let's say we do a 1 foot offset all around the entire roof. So it's going to look like this. And then we have to pick which edges are going to be sloped. So we can see from our front view that this edge is sloped and it corresponds to here. Then we can see this edge is sloped. So this is also going to be sloped. This edge is sloped, which is this one right here. This edge slopes back. So that edge is going to be sloped. And then this is also sloped. So now we would also load the back elevation and kind of look, but I can already guess that this is sloped and this is sloped. That's what's going to form that triangle at the end here and the triangle at the end here. And then this is not sloped, this is not sloped, and this is not sloped, right? So now we're forming those triangles. And then this is probably also a triangle at the end. So it's probably a gable end. So I'm going to say that's not sloped, and this is sloped, and this is sloped. So hopefully you followed along. If not, let's just create a roof and you'll see what I'm talking about. So now if we go to architecture, let's go to roof, roof by footprint, and let's start drawing a sketch. So we're going to click this line tool. And we also know we want it to be offset 1 foot. So let's go to this little offset command and type in 1 foot and enter. So now we can trace the edge of the building and it will automatically move it 1 foot. So now all we have to do is go around the entire edge of the building. And it even trimmed your lines together for you. So now you can see it automatically makes every single edge sloped. And that's not what we want. So if you remember, we're going to go through and we're going to try to find the edges that aren't sloped. So I think that edge, and then that edge, that edge, that edge, and that edge. In my mind, those are the ones that aren't sloped. So I selected all of those, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to uncheck define slope. So do you see how the little slope marker disappeared from those lines? Now, we also need to define how steep the slope is on each one of these lines. By default, it does 912. Let's just leave it like that for the time being. And let's click the checkbox to finish. And then let's look over here at our front elevation and see how we did. Okay, so it looks pretty good from the front. We're looking pretty good. So let's go to our back elevation, which is north. And we can also insert the image there. So let's do that. Let's go to Insert, Image, and let's pick back elevation. And I'm not going to try to scale this. I'm just going to put it on the back. And we'll just use it as a reference image. So you can see it's not quite right from the back just yet. So we're going to have to edit that. They did this thing where instead of spanning the whole back like this, they did this weird little shed roof off to the side. So we might look at how we're going to do that. Honestly, I don't care if you do it exactly like the drawing. Let's just leave. I'm just going to leave our house the way it is. I'm not going to bother following exactly what they did. You can if you want to, but it just adds more. The purpose of this exercise isn't to get it exactly right. I just want you to understand how to build a home from a reference plan. And in doing so, you're also learning, if you ever wanted to design your own from scratch, you are understanding the commands that it's going to take. All right. So now that we've verified that it's roughly correct from the back, let's maybe just do the east elevation. So north, south, east would be the right elevation. So let's import that image on the right side. And let's take a look at how we did. Okay, so you can see the front looks the same. The end looks the same. The only thing we didn't do is we didn't do this extended porch. So if we look at the roof or the main floor plan, you can see they have this covered area. So this would be a good time to use your reference planes. So I'm going to go up to the architectural tab and pick reference plane. And I'm going to draw right here where the back covered patio area is. And I'm going to do another reference plane. I'm going to do 2 more reference planes to show where the sides are. 1 there and 1 there. And now I'm going to go to my roof plan and you can see my reference planes. So I'm going to click on my roof and I'm going to hit Edit Footprint. And what I'm going to do is I can drag this back to my line, and then I'm going to click it and I'm going to move that line 1 foot so that there's a 1 foot offset off of the back area. And now you can kind of see, now we begin to see why they made this little area separate from this longer area. So I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but maybe I will. So let's draw exactly where we need it. And then what we're going to do is I'll use the trim command to trim that. I'm also going to use the move command to move it 1 foot so that it's offset 1 foot, just like the other side. And then we can also use this line command with a 1 foot offset, and I'll just draw this line here. And it's offsetting it on the wrong side, so if you hit the space bar while you're drawing, it will flip it. There we go. So now let's trim these the way we want them. And this actually isn't going to quite do what we want it to do on the back. So I'm actually going to trim it like this. And I'm going to delete these 2 lines. So I'm going to select them and I'll just hit the delete key. And we'll see what that does. That should be roughly correct. So let's hit finish. And now you can see from the side we look much more in alignment. And if we go to the south elevation, we look okay. And then the north elevation, which is the back side, something's going on here, and we'll need to look at what's going on there. The best way to do that would be in 3D. Let's see what that looks like in 3D. Oh, So you know the reason it's doing that is this wall is not lined up with this wall, and this edge of the roof isn't lined up with that edge of the roof, so it made this little jump. So let's correct that. Let's go to our floor plan. Let's use the align command. So if you go to modify and align, AL is the shortcut. So let's just align this wall to this wall. Do you remember it's because I moved this wall up so that it was exactly 19 feet. So let's click that line, and then this is the line we want to move, so we'll click it and move it up as well. So now we've corrected the walls. Let's correct the roof. Let's double click on the roof. That'll enter the sketch mode. And let's also use the align tool to align that wall or this edge of the roof to this one. So you first click the line you don't want to move, then the second line you click is the one that's going to move. So now they're aligned and I can click finish. And now you can see that fixed our roof. So it looks good. So let's finish making this little piece of roof to cover that little spot. The other thing that's happening is you can see in our roof plan, it's cutting our roof. So do you remember how we fix that? It means the cutting plane of this view is too low. We need to make it higher so that it doesn't cut through the roof. So if you click into the view, but don't select anything, you can go over here to the view's properties, and we need to edit the view range. So we'll hit view range and we'll move it up really high. In fact, we're going to move it really high. So we need to move first the top of the view. Let's move that to, I don't think the roof will be taller than 20 feet. So let's move that to 20 feet. Oops, I accidentally clicked out of there. Hit edit. I'm going to edit the view range again. So the top of the view is 20, and let's cut it just below that at 19 feet. And then click apply, and you can see now in our view it works. So then we'll click OK. Now we're seeing the whole roof. And you're going to notice something interesting here, which is something we have not covered yet, but you can see the level 1 walls that are below the view range. This is because by default, if you go over here, if you don't select anything, you're just looking at the view settings. If you look over here, there's something called underlay. And this underlay is meant to show you what's below the view that you're looking at. So right now it's selected that the underlay is looking down at the main floor. So if you don't want that, you can click none, and it will make the floor below disappear. So when you go to put the roof plan on a sheet, you don't want to see the walls below. You want it to look like it currently looks like. But when you're designing the roof, it's nice to be able to see what's below. So let's turn the underlay back on to main floor, and you can see it comes back. So that's very handy for us. So let's make this last little piece of roof. So we're going to make a new roof. So we'll go to architecture and we'll hit the roof command. And now we're going to draw the roof again. So we'll use the line, and we're going to use the 1 foot offset. And let's just draw it like this. I need to hit the space bar to flip it. Okay, so now though, where do we draw the rest of the roof? It's hard to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the line command, and I'm just going to draw at the edge of the existing roof that we just made. And then I'll trim these lines together. And now I have to decide what edges of the roof are going to be sloped. So I think the only edge I want sloped is this one right here. So I'll leave that one, and the rest of them, I'm going to turn the slope off up here. And then let's just see what it does. Let's finish the command. And you can see it made that little piece of roof for us. Okay, so before we go any further, let's start cleaning up the model in 3D and in the front elevation. Let's look at the front elevation. So that would be south. Let's get the pitch of the roof correct. Like right now you can see we need to make the roof steeper in order to make it look like our example picture. So you can do that you can do it a couple ways. If you double click on the roof, you can select all of these sloped lines and you can individually change the slope of each line. I'm going to exit out because that's not what we want to do. We want to change all of the slopes all at once. So if you just click on the roof, if you go over here, there's something you can see in its properties. There's a slope command. Let's just change the slope to something steeper. Instead of 9, let's do a 12-12. That means for every 12 inches it goes over, it will go up 12 inches. So what this is showing is the rise and the run. So the rise, it goes up 12 inches, over 12 inches. When it was 9, it would go up 9 inches and then go over 12 inches. So if we do 12-12, you can see it got steeper. Now maybe that was too steep because now it's a little bit higher, but I think it's actually okay the way we have it. I like the 12-12. It makes a nice 45-degree angle. Okay, so let's go back to 3D. And you can see the walls don't go up to the roof. So there's an easy way to fix that. If you select a wall, you can select the wall, and then up here under the Modify Walls command, there's something called Attach Top. So if you click that button, you can now pick what you want the top of the wall to go to. So we're going to pick our roof. And then it will extend the wall up to the roof. And we're going to do that with all of our exterior walls. So I'm going to go around. I'm not going to select this wall just yet. Let's do all of the other walls though. And I'm holding down Control every time I click so that I can add to the selection. All right, so now that I've clicked all the walls, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to hit Attach to Top. And I'm going to click the roof. And do you see how it extends everything up to the roof line? That's exactly what we want. It does something a little bit funny here, which we'll have to fix later, because you can see this isn't quite right what's going on here. In fact, let's turn on consistent colors so that we can see a little bit better what's going on. Here we go. So we've got most of it fixed. And now there's just a couple things that are still not quite right. Let's pick this wall again. And let's attach it again to the second roof. And that'll go up like that. And then this wall, we can attach it as well to this little roof. Okay. Now what we want to do is let's look at the back elevation, which is north. And you can see this roof doesn't have the same slope as the other one. So let's pick that little piece of roof and let's give it a lower slope. Let's give it a 6-12. There we go. So now it needs to extend till it meets here. And if we look in 3D, it needs to extend a couple ways. It needs to extend back this way, and then it also needs to go back against that roof. So let's figure out how to do that together. If we click on the roof, there is a command. There's a Join Geometry command. So if you look under Geometry right here, at the very top, it's a really small icon. It looks like the top of a roof, like you're looking down on it. It's called the Join Unjoin Roof. So you can click that button and you can click the edge of the roof that you want to join to another roof. So first click this edge, and then now we can click this roof right here and it'll extend it back. You see how it did that? And then we want to do the same thing with this side. So let's go back to this Join Roof command. Let's pick this edge, and then let's see if it'll let us pick. So if you hover on the edge of this roof, you can click it, and now it extended it back. So now we fixed that roof. Now the only thing that's left is to fill in this little spot here. This is a little funny. This wall should all be the same plane all the way back. And then this needs to go back a little bit more like this. So let's fix that. First thing we need to do is create another roof that goes back behind above this wall. So to do that, let's go to, really quickly, I'm going to unjoin these walls because they're not quite right. So I'm going to select all the walls, and there is a detach command. Next to the attach command, we can detach it. So let's hit detach, and we'll click our roof again, and it'll take the walls back to the way they were. So now we can look at our roof plan. And what we need to do is what we're essentially trying to do is make a little piece of roof that comes back like this. So that's what we're going to draw. We're just going to draw in that roof. So we'll go to the architectural tab, hit roof, and then I'm going to just do the rectangle tool. And I'm going to let it align with that wall, and I'm going to drag it till it's at this peak right here. And click OK. And you can also see in 3D what you're drawing. Now the only edge that we want to be sloped is this one. The rest of them shouldn't have a slope. So I'm going to take the slope off of those. And then the only other thing we need to remember to do is change over here. Let's change it from a 9/12 to a 12/12 so that it matches the other roof. And then let's click OK. And now you can see in 3D, it made that other roof. And what we're going to do is, now there's this little line between the two roofs, which bugs me a little bit. So we're going to join this roof with this roof. So if we go up to the Modify tab, there's the Join Roof command, but we don't really need to join or unjoin. We don't need to extend the roof. We just want, they're already touching. So we're going to use a different command called the Join Geometry command. So if you click that button, you can select the two pieces of model that you want to join together. And when you select both of them, you can see how it joins it together. And so now it looks nice. So now let's go back and select the walls that we unjoined from the roof. And let's join them back up to this roof. Now the problem here is this wall, we don't want it to join to this upper roof. We want it to join to the lower roof. So I'm going to select that wall, and I'm going to hit the unjoin command, or the detach command, sorry. And I'm going to click the roof and it'll detach it. And now I'm going to attach it to the lower piece that we just made, like that. And then this wall, we want it to also be attached to this roof. To this roof that we just made. So let's click that wall and let's hit attach, and we'll attach it to that second roof. And now it fixes it for us. We've got a little bit of a problem here because we also want to attach. So what it's doing is it's attaching this wall to this roof, but that roof stops a little bit short of where the wall goes. So it looks like we also need to fix that little weird thing going on there. We also need to attach that to this big roof, like that. So that fixes it. So that wall needed to be joined to both the little piece and the big piece in order to solve the problem. It can be a little bit finicky, and these are things you have to play with when you're working on your own because they can get frustrating. Okay, so now you'll see the last problem that we have to fix is now there's this gap where there should be a wall. There's this like hole, and that's because the wall below, it only goes to right here, and then there's no wall below. in order to fill it. So there's nothing to extend up to fill that gap. So we have a couple options. We can either draw a new wall and the base can be at the roof level, and then we can just extend that wall up to there. Or we can try to get this wall to fill in that hole. I like the method of trying to get this wall to fill in the hole. And you're going to use a technique that you haven't learned yet, and that's you can edit the profile of a wall. So to see what I mean, let's go to the south elevation where we can see this wall. And we're going to try to select the wall. So you need to grab the edge in order to get the wall, or something else that's going to be new, that's a handy tip. Sometimes it's hard to select the edge of something. Sometimes you just like to click in the middle of it and have it select it. So in that case, if you'd like to select the wall by clicking the middle, if you go down here, there's these little selection tool options. And if you hover over this, the fourth one in, it says select element by face. Right now it's got a little red X, which means you can't pick the face of something. You have to pick the edge. If you click that, it'll take the X away, and now you can select the face of the wall. And sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes that actually is not easy. It's not what you want, and so you shut it off. But right now I want it on, so let's click the face of that. Once you click the wall, up where we were using before, you saw the attach top and the detach. Well, now there's a little tool called the edit profile. If you click that button, it'll give you this little dialog, and we'll just close. And it now shows you the original, this is originally what the wall looked like. So we can edit this sketch to be whatever we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend it so that it follows the roof and it fills in this little hole that it wasn't filling in before. So my favorite way to make these lines is a little tool up here in the draw menu. We mostly have been using line, or we've been using the rectangle. There's a little option called pick lines. If you click that, it allows you to pick edges of the model in order to create a sketch. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick the underside of the roof on both sides. And then I think I'll pick the underside of this roof. And then I'm going to hit escape once to exit the drawing tool. And now I need to clean up this sketch. So now I'm going to use the trim command. I'm going to extend that up to there. And then I'm going to trim that to there and that to there. So now the shape that the wall is going to be like this, which is what we want. But we have this line that's floating here, and we want to delete that. Because if we don't delete it, when we go to exit the sketch, it'll give us an error. Because in order to finish a sketch, you can only have what they call a closed loop, which means all the lines touch each other at the ends, and they come together to make a loop. So if you don't have a loop, it's going to give you an error. So we want to make sure we have that loop. And then we're going to click the finish. And then it's going to tell you, oh, because you edited the profile, we can no longer join that wall to the roof. That's okay. So we'll unjoin the elements. Okay, it wants us to save. So let's, we should have done that in the beginning. Let's save as project. And I'm just going to save this as small house, or let's do tiny house. Save. There we go. So now let's look in 3D. Let's go to our 3D model here and see how we did. Oh, we did pretty good. There's this weird line here because that's the wall going the other direction. It, for some reason, is drawing a line, but it's modeled correctly. So let's, to get rid of that line, let's join the wall to the, let's join these two walls together. So if we go to the Modify tab, There's that join geometry command. Let's join that wall. Whoops, join that wall with that wall, and you can see it goes away. So now it took us a little bit, but now you can see our house looks really good. And if we go to the south elevation, it's looking pretty good. So the next thing we need to do is we need to give it a ceiling on the inside and a floor. So to do the floor, let's go to the main floor plan, and this should be pretty easy for you. If you don't think you need to know how to do the floor, you can stop watching. And if you don't need to do the ceiling, you can stop watching. You should be able to do those on your own at this point. But in case you want a reminder, you can continue to watch. So we're just going to do architectural tab, then go to the floor and click the floor button. Now we're in a sketch, and now we just need to draw the sketch. It's up to you where you want the edge of the floor to be. Technically, we're not going to do foundations on this house, but you can easily do foundations if you want. All they are is a wall that's concrete. So if you want to draw a concrete wall underneath this wall, you can do that. We're not going to do that in this exercise. But if you were to do that, then the floor would technically sit on top of the foundations. But I'm just going to I'll probably draw the floor to the outside of the wall. So we're going to hurry and do that. Again, I don't care how you do it. This is mostly an exercise to help you learn how to make these elements. It's not meant to try to get you to do it exactly right how the architect would do it, because even in an architectural firm, people do it different ways. All right, so I've made my closed loop for the floor, and I'm going to, before I hit finish, let's look at the properties. So the first thing we're going to look at is what type is the floor. Right now it's a generic 12 inches. So 12 inches is probably correct if you're going to have a basement and these are going to be floor joists. Pretty typical is an 11 and 7/8 inch floor joist. It's called a TJI. They're usually around 12 inches. So maybe a 12-inch floor would be good. If you're building it right on the ground, then typically you do 4 inches of concrete. So let's just do a 4-inch concrete floor. And then you can look where it's being hosted. So you can see it's by default, it's level 1. It's on the main floor. And that's really all we probably need to look at for now. You could offset it up or down from the main floor level. We're just going to keep it right even with the floor level. So once we've picked the right type and we've picked the right level to host it to, we can hit the finish command. And now if we look in our model, you can see it's added the floor. So if we go to 3D, here we go. Now we've got a floor in our house. Now, ceilings are next. So to do the ceilings, it might be easier to look up at the ceiling. So I'm going to go to the reflected ceiling plan. And it looks just like the floor plan, only you're looking up instead of down. So now when I'm in this view, I'm going to go to the ceiling and I'm going to hit the sketch ceiling button. And it's up to you. If you want the different parts of the house to have different height ceilings, you can do each room separately. I'm just going to say everything is going to be flat. We're not going to do a vault in the main room. Probably if you were designing your own house, I would probably put a vault down the middle. And in that case, you'd have to draw 2 ceilings and you'd have to slope each ceiling. We're not going to do that in this class. So I'm just going to draw 1 ceiling that goes to the inside face of all of the walls. Even on the porch, I guess. Well, technically the porch would have a different ceiling than the rest of the house. It would have soffit probably in there. So we'll exclude that for now. And I'm going to trim those. And once again, we're going to look and see what kind of ceiling we've got. For now, it says gypboard on wood furring. I'm just going to choose a generic right now, for now. And then it's currently hosted to the main level. And then it goes up 9 feet. I'm going to say I would rather Oh yeah, that's fine for now. We'll just keep it 9 feet off of the main floor, and then we'll click OK to close the sketch. And now if you look in 3D, you really can't tell if it did anything. So I'm just going to click the roof. I'm going to write, and then I'm going to do the temporary hide command. So I'm going to go to the glasses and I'm going to temporarily hide the element. And now you can see that my ceiling is in there. So that's great. Now I've got everything. I've got the basics now. So that's it for this part of the exercise. Take some time. Hopefully, I know this was a really long exercise video, but what I found is we used to just show you the basics and then let you try to do the rest on your own, but people would keep running into problems. So by watching me hit the problems and show you how to fix them, I think it teaches you a lot more, a lot quicker. Otherwise, you were just left to figure it out on your own, which can sometimes be really difficult. And it actually takes up more time for you to go try to figure it out than it does for me to just teach you. So thanks for holding in this far. I know there's still a lot more steps that you have to do for this exercise, but I promise in the end, it probably helps you get the exercise done faster than if I was just to make these short and let you go on your own. Also, you had the option always to crank this up to 2 times the speed if you need to. So I hope this is helpful. We will add doors and windows later in the exercise, but now this gets you a good looking base for your first major real model.